Janet? Far, far away. They just wait until the word is spoken out. Okay, well, I'm not doing the Dave is doing it. Dave is not there yet. Dave doesn't do it, I'll do it. About the Northex area. No.
So I'll
They've probably got it figured out by the time they come in.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's in the narthex, it says.
Oh, it does.
It's
Okay.
right here.
Okay.
In the narthex.
I'm going to put my glasses on to read.
I just have to remember what a narthex was.
I know, and I have the most trouble spelling it.
And to me,
It's
I forget that the same word.
Yeah, I just have to Google that.
Which is really appropriate.
But it is very traditional. Oh, no. Hello, hello.
I've let you read that. With your county around.
Of course. Yeah, I remember. What better way to enjoy your Sunday? Yeah. It's soft food Sunday. That's why my cats love me. Sunday's the day they get soft food because of church on Sunday. They get all their loving to get their soft food.
My biggest bummer is I feel like
I went with Florida Formal, which is flip flops.
I noticed you have letters, well, it's hard soles. I don't do hard soles.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I have a few pairs like that. I have some Slate Guide and blue suede shoes.
I don't get used.
So, yes.
Mine's under here.
Yeah, that's down here.
You're where?
Way down there.
Oh, you're down there. Oh, wow.
I won't break much of it because
No.
then I have other problems. What?
You're a star, Truman. This is the biggest for a while.
It's the right, it has to be the right Sunday.
It's Mary. Take Mary. Yes. My turn. Yes. Thank you. It was fun. Quick rehearsal.
Good morning. Okay. Yes.
This is called I'm Beginning to See the Light.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Welcome to the Treasure Coast Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Stuart, Florida. Today is October 17th. My name is John Morn, and I will be your worship associate today. It is good to see all our vaccinated friends here in the sanctuary, although we were on YouTube as well. You YouTubers, to put your name on our mailing list or to find out more information about us, go to our website at tcuuc.org. You'll get announcements in our Friday online newsletter to know a bit more about us. Visitors, if you are comfortable, please step up to the microphone and introduce yourselves. Okay, we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
I have to. Hi, my name is David, and I'm here with my family, my husband Jesse, and our daughter Faith, and we're visiting from the UU of the Palm Beaches. Our congregation is finally starting to meet in person in 2 weeks, but we couldn't wait, so we decided we wanted to come to service. So glad to join you guys.
Welcome, David. Thanks. We have some big news. Today, we are going to sing through our masks once again. And we will have water and cookies in the narthex after the service. You saw the tables out there. There's going to be a game time set up in Heston Hall sometime soon. Check the newsletter to see Linda Shuey, Pat Tosney, or Marguerite Gregory. Join us the first and third Tuesdays at Stewart Veterans Memorial Park downtown at noon for our brown bag lunch. The next meeting will be this Tuesday, the 19th. Remember, the special service to celebrate the Johnson's life will be on Sunday, the 31st, here at our regular time, 11 a.m. And the book club will finish up the novel Homegoing on this Wednesday, and we'll start a new book, A Walk in the Woods, on October 27th. Join us on Zoom Wednesdays at 11 o'clock. And there's an announcement about that in the newsletter. Janet has a special announcement.
Cremains. I didn't know that word. I wrote a little article for our newsletter, and Debbie kindly edited it. The news is we are going to have a memorial garden fund. As you know, for pledging members, we already have some vaults for urns with cremains. Many of our founding members are there. But we would like to establish, most likely out back, an area for scattered cremains. And we have now a $500 seed money from our endowment fund that the board has approved. So we're going to need a little bit more money. Our first step will be to hire a landscape architect to figure out where that is going to be. Initially, Ann Nozawa and I are heading up this team, but boy, we sure need help. And on the board, we're into so many things. If someone could step up for that leadership too, we'd really appreciate it. Memorial Garden Fund. If you happen to have your checkbook with you today, you can write that. You can write a check for that. Just make clear it's Memorial Garden Fund. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. A big thanks to those who helped with the service today. Jackie Robbins, as always, as you've been doing for several months, with the music, our greeters and ushers, and our host, Karina Poloni, and our tech wizard, Chris McGann. Without them, we couldn't be doing this. Truman will be in the pulpit today, Truman Dunn, and he's going to light the chalice. This chalice is lit in our hearts each time that we pray for vision, long for healing, forgive our enemies, comfort our neighbors, and prepare for Justice's Day. In its light, our hope and compassion are renewed, and the ties that bind each to all become clear. Now by this sacred flame, the path before us is brightened. Love prepares our way. Harmony is in view. There is no east or west, no south or north, only a world to greet and bless with more light still. Amen. In her novel, Homegoing, Ya Gayasi tells the story of Ya, a school teacher in a small village. As a child, his face was disfigured in a fire. He asked his students to read what was on his blackboard. It says, "History is storytelling," Peter answered. He smiled at the pent-up excitement releasing. "History is storytelling," Yao repeated. He walked down the aisles between the rows of seats, making sure to look each boy in the eye. Once he finished walking and stood in the back of the room where the boys would have to crane their necks in order to see him, he asked, "Who would like to tell the story of how I got my scar?" In the story, the students go on to tell several rumors they heard about how he got his scar, and after which Gayasi writes, Yaw continued, making his way back to the front of the room to look at his students, the bright boys of an uncertain Gold Coast, learning the white book from a scarred man. "Whose story is correct?" Yaw asked. They looked around at the boys who had spoken as though trying to establish their allegiance by holding a gaze, casting a vote, by sending a glance. Finally, once the murmuring subsided, Peter raised his hand again. "Mr. Agyakam, we cannot know which story is correct." He looked at the rest of the class, slowly understanding. "We cannot know which story is correct because we were not there." Yao nodded. He sat in his chair at the front of the room and looked at all the young men. This is the problem of history. We cannot know that which we were not there to see and hear and experience for others, for ourselves. We must rely on the words of others, those who were there in the olden days. They told stories to the children so that the children would know, so that the children could tell stories to their children, and so on and so on. But now we come upon the problem of conflicting stories. Kojo Nyarka says that when the warriors came to his village, their coats were red, but Kwame Adu says that they were blue. Whose story do we believe then? The boys were silent. They stared at him, waiting. We believe the one who has the power. He is the one who gets to write the story. So when you study history, you must always ask yourself, whose story am I missing? Whose voice was suppressed so that this voice could come forth? Once you have figured that out, you must find that story too. For there, you begin to get a clearer yet still imperfect picture. When I read this, I thought about the news that we read and see and hear. And I think about how this year, those I favor are in power. Still, I need to listen humbly to the other stories so that I can get a clearer yet imperfect picture. We're going to sing the hymn number 360, Here We Have Gathered. And you can sing through your masks.
As loudly as you'd like. Hang on, sorry, technical difficulties. Reconnect. That was a long opening.
There was.
Beautiful words though.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
The trouble with Bluetooth.
Yeah. Oh, here. Yes. Okay, we got it. Here we go. Here we have gathered. I'm sorry. Another glitch. 360, is it? All right.
Have gathered side by side, circle of kinships, come and stand inside. Here we have gathered, all to celebrate days of a lifetime, whether small and great. We make the praises
Let us recite our affirmation, speaking the first verse and singing the second. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
All that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung from every land by every tongue. Amen.
Now is the time to share our joys and sorrows. Please step up to the microphone to speak. Tell us your name first. Afterwards, move a stone in our symbolic river of life to mark each joy and sorrow. And I will. Sorry. Try to keep it personal and brief. Stay forward to the mic.
Good morning. My name is Barney Miller Moore, and I just want to say I am so thankful. John and I took a trip last week. We went to State College, Pennsylvania, and I was sharing with Carolyn. Then we went to the International Clock and Watch Society Museum in Columbia. We went to visit his grandfather's grave, who was a World War I veteran, in Willow Grove. We didn't get a chance to go see one of our former church members. I was sorry about that, but I did enjoy a Philly cheesesteak, the real deal. So we picked up our 90-year-old cousin and brought her to visit her children as they pack up her house, and she's going to fly back to State College. So I just wanted to say how thankful I am that we took a road trip that was unbelievable. And we drove all the way and we made it back safely.
Morning, I'm Jesse Walters, and I'm going to totally embarrass my daughter, but she worked very hard to get accepted at Bach Middle School for the Arts in West Palm. We were very proud of her, and she got her first report card for 6th grade on Friday, 3 A's, 3 B's, and 2 C's. Way to go, Faith.
This is for Faith.
Hi, I'm Jackie Robbins, and I am the string mentor for the Treasure Coast Youth Symphony. I also help out other kids who might be having problems with cleft reading or whatever. They had their first concert. Of course, there was no youth symphony last year because of the pandemic, and we also lost like 26 kids to graduations. So it's a very small, much smaller group. We're looking for more young people to come into this circle and use their talents and develop skills socially. Anyway, I'm going to try to see if Debbie and the brochure can add these dates, but the Youth Symphony's first concerts are November 8th in Vero Beach, and then here at EC Theater on the 15th, and the 22nd of November is at the Lyric Theater. So if anybody's interested, it's a great thing to bring your kids and or just to go and see what's happening in our community with music and the arts. So thank you. And I'm really happy to be able to work with these young people and their talent.
Bob always worries when I come up to the mic. The reason why I was missing last week is because I went to the biggest gathering of Unitarians in New York City, and that was New York Comic Con. So before you go to Comic Con, you have to understand that there are some rules, which means respect for everyone. They do not tolerate any a disrespect for any group. Before you get to the Javits Center, which is 5 stories high, you pass through several checkpoints. The first checkpoint is Metro Health, where they give you covers for your vaccination card.
Oh, how nice.
The second, and that's about 4 blocks, about 3 blocks, you pass through the vaccination verification process. And they check your paperwork. And then you're allowed to approach the Javits Center. The Javits Center also has a garden on the roof. You've heard about these buildings that have that are growing things. They have a farm on the roof. The numbers of people in costume, just before everybody starts to laugh, that's a costume contest. Those people made their costumes. Their costumes are being judged by professional costumers from Hollywood, and they win prizes. You can ask anybody to stop and let them take a picture, let you take a picture of them. It's wonderful. It's crowded. It's $80 for the day. And I had a wonderful time. The last thing I want to throw in is Comic-Con is very well organized, and they had a mental health booth. So when you pass through, you as an adult or a child can go to the mental health booth, get things to make you more calm, the equivalent of Greek worry beads, things for children, booklets for children, and first aid kits. It's the best $80 I spent, and I want to urge all of you, go. Go if you can. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Hi, I'm Fred. I am joyful and thankful to have a lovely wife like Ronnie. She loves to decorate our house, and Hollywood. Halloween, I think, is her special favorite because for Halloween, she decorates the house by putting statues and pictures of herself all over.
And what is that address?
I see Jill has joined us on YouTube. Hi, Jill.
Just one more quick one, and Truman, we are going to let you speak. I just wanted to announce our UU group in North Carolina, in Greensboro, adopted a family 12 years ago from the Congo. And the father had 9 children that we knew of. Well, then later, 3 more showed up. And 3 years ago, the others came, and he had actually abandoned them. And they had a son that we all just kind of fell for, Pascal. And Pascal had basically been considered an orphan, and he just ran across the right people. He was hungry and lost in the Congo in a camp, and ran across the right people, immigration people, and just one of millions came over. He doesn't speak a lot of English. He speaks Swahili and French. And Pascal just got a full scholarship at Guilford College from the Friends. And we are just so thankful to the Friends group. And it's worth $88,000. And we're just amazed, but they are looking for diversity. And so this is for Pascal, he's a miracle. There's a story for you, John.
For those whose joys and sorrows are too private to share, know that our hearts are with you.
Our meditative reading today is by Peter Morales. Peter Morales was the 8th president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, serving from 2009 to 2017. Prior to his election, he was the senior minister at Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church in Golden, Colorado. And I selected this reading because in my years as a UU, I have found that one of the most taboo words is spirituality. And this reading speaks to that. It's called Experience Connection. What does deep spirituality feel like to you? Spirituality is impossible to define and difficult to describe. For me, spirituality feels like connection. Connection to myself, connection to others around me, to the earth, and all of creation. Connection to myself feels like deep peace, awareness, calm, authenticity. Connection to others feels like compassion, community, acceptance, and enduring love. Spirituality is not an idea, it is an experience. When I experience connection, dividing lines disappear. Inner conflict gives way to integrity. A line that separates my individuality from others fades. We become one. I find connections with my deepest self in times of solitary practice and reflection. I find connection with others in community, often in worship. All the great spiritual traditions teach this. Today, the connection with creation, with the earth and the cosmos may be the most difficult. We live in artificial, controlled environments that separate us from the natural world. More than humans in any other time, we live separated from the natural world, the world from which we emerged and that sustains our lives. We so very much need to experience our world. We need to let go of controlling our world and allow ourselves to become one with it. We find ourselves when we lose ourselves. May we connect, really connect. When we do, it changes everything. Moments of silence. Amen.
Now let us sing Spirit of Life. We're going to actually hum the first go round and then sing.
giving life the shape of justice, whose hope be close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Will the usher or ushers please step forward? Fred. Okay. Yeah.
What would like you to speak before they start?
Okay. Sorry.
Talk about
Okay.
what the
Okay.
offering.
It is said the Lord loves a cheerful giver, yet will accept from the grouch as well. As the ushers prepare to take this morning's offering, may each of us look into not just our wallets or our checkbooks to see how much we have with us. Let us also look into our hearts and see what is available there. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope. And let us make our offering from that account. This morning's offering is received in the spirit of grateful fellowship.
I have a manuscript. Because otherwise, I'm typical of most preachers. I can get off on all kinds of tangents. Although sometimes the tangents are better than the manuscript itself. One other quick question. In terms of time, it's kind of a long, drawn-out sermon today. It's kind of bracing you. I'm going to use the clock that's on the back wall up there. And it seems to be giving me a whole lot of time. So I do want to thank John for leading the service today and helping, along with Janet, to kind of orient me. I haven't been here for a lot of services, and so just to get the feel for the services themselves. I think John and I are probably two of the newest kids on the block here at Treasure Coast. So, and here we are, you kind of threw us up front. And although he isn't here today, I do want to thank Bob McDonald for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you this morning. Most of you know that I'm a former Moravian minister. Moravians, we'll talk about that another time, very small sect, Czechoslovakia, oldest Protestant denomination in the world, 45,000 in all of the United States and North America. So a very tiny but mainline but conservative Christian denomination. Some of you may also remember that I spoke one other time here at Treasure Coast at one of our Zoom services where I talked about having been tried and convicted of heresy by my denomination for academic lectures that I gave at our theological seminary in Pennsylvania. I was actually tried and convicted twice. I flunked the second time around as well. I was supposed to be defrocked, which is always curious to me because defrocked makes you think of pulling a collar off of the neck of a priest or a minister. We Moravians didn't wear collars, so I wasn't exactly sure what they were going to do. But by playing theological word games with the denominational leadership, and I literally mean playing theological word games with the denominational leadership, I was able to remain as clergy until I retired. That's a story all its own about theological word games. However, for my last 12 years as a Moravian minister, my sermons were monitored. And I had to appear before the Council of Bishops regarding my sermons a number of times. So when I retired 8 years ago, I decided I was done with the pulpit. However, Bob McDonald became my very first friend when I became a snowbird here in Florida last year. So when your very first friend in a new place asks, here I am, back in the pulpit I said I would never return to again. So instead of being done with the pulpit, it is done in the pulpit. My last name is Dunn. Although I don't really consider what I'm doing today as preaching, I consider myself a member of this congregation like the rest of you, sharing some thoughts. I love to hear others of you when you share your thoughts during the sermon time, because I believe that one of the most beautiful things about being a part of a community is learning from one another. I believe that every single one of us here has something unique in our own life experience and perspective that can help the rest of us grow in understanding and wisdom. The title for my remarks today, Three Things We Can Learn from Conservatives, makes a couple of assumptions. The first assumption is that most UUs identify as liberal or progressive. And the second assumption is that as UU liberals or progressives, we really don't think there's much of anything we can learn from conservatives, much less three things. There isn't time for me to defend those assumptions. Suffice it to say that in my 8 years as a UU, experiencing a number of different UU congregations, I have found few UUs who proudly claim to be conservative. Now, that's not to say there aren't some closeted conservatives in UU congregations, but it's not an easy thing to always be voted or shouted down by the liberal majority all the time. Unless, as with a couple of UU conservatives in our North Carolina fellowship, you just enjoy being a contrarian or throwing bombs into meetings. And in terms of the second assumption, that most of us as liberals don't really believe there's much that we can learn from conservatives, this also comes from my years as a UU and discovering that conservatives, more than anyone else, are the opposition for UUs. Especially these days when conservatives are working to undo so many things that we UUs care about. The right to vote, teaching about race in schools, a woman's right to choose. The list is endless. I should also say that I'm not going to even try to defend what a conservative or what a liberal is. There is no one definition of a conservative or a liberal. I know that. We all fall somewhere on the spectrum to the right or to the left. But what I do know is that most UUs consider themselves to be liberals, at least on the social issues. I've been a liberal nearly all my life, from protesting the Vietnam War to SNCC and the Civil Rights Movement to my present interfaith dialogue and Red and Blue America dialogue work. I love being a Unitarian Universalist after all those years in what I would call the belief prison of Christianity. I love being with my peeps, as they say. It's a very human thing to want to be with your own kind, those who share your values. But at what point does surrounding yourself with people who share the same values become groupthink? For all of our talk about diversity as you use, we are not diverse. Not just in terms of race, or as is blindingly obvious in so many UU congregations, diverse in age. We UUs actually lack any real diversity of viewpoint, especially our polar opposites, conservatives. So what would happen if our Treasure Coast congregation had more conservatives in our midst? We would argue a whole lot more, but we would be arguing about the issues. That will never change. Conservatives and liberals have different worldviews and will always disagree. But might there actually be things that conservatives believe about the issues and how to solve them that might be an even better solution than we liberals put forth? Do we think we have all the answers? Or as I tried to say at the beginning of these remarks, do we all have something to contribute, something to bring to the table, even conservatives? However, the three things that I want to offer today that we can learn from conservatives really don't have anything to do with their views on the issues. The things that we can learn from conservatives have much more to do with what kind of community we want to be here at Treasure Coast. I love the UUA image of the beloved community. On the UUA website, beloved community is described as happening when people of diverse racial, ethnic, educational, class, gender, abilities, sexual orientation, and backgrounds and identities come together in an interdependent relationship of love, mutual respect, and care. Words to warm a liberal's heart. But the question becomes for me, do we as Unitarian Universalists extend the same love, mutual respect, and care toward our conservative sisters and brothers? In my experience, we do not. And that, in my view, is our loss. Which finally brings me to the three things I think we can learn from welcoming more conservatives into our midst. The first thing I think we can learn from conservatives is more humility. As a liberal, that's not something that I came to easily. I've always thought of myself as kind, caring, and yes, humble. After all, one of the big differences between liberals and conservatives, at least in our view as liberals, is that liberals are open-minded and accepting, while conservatives are closed-minded, judgmental. Closed-minded, judgmental. Just two of the many words we liberals use to describe conservatives. What are some of the other words we use? Audience participation. Just shout it out. What? Okay.
Rigid.
Narrow. How about racist, sexist, homophobic, uneducated. I have to confess, I've used those words myself, especially since the emergence of Donald Trump and all those who voted for Donald Trump. I keep asking myself, how could they be so stupid to vote for such a bigoted, racist, homophobic, xenophobic narcissist? But over the last few years, as I've listened to myself and my fellow UUs talk about conservatives and Trump voters, groupthink, group words, it began to feel a bit uncomfortable for me. I couldn't quite name it until Hillary Clinton finally made it all very clear when she called those who would vote for Trump a basket of deplorables. And I realized that conservatives, especially rural, white Republicans, might be right. Maybe we liberals really do look down on them as uneducated bigots and homophobes. Maybe we liberals really do act like elites who are smarter and, yes, better than those narrow-minded right-wingers. So I began to ask myself, do I really think that I am smarter and better than all those Trump voters? And everything in me was saying, yes, yes, yes. Do I really think that I'm smarter than the millions of people in rural America who didn't go to college? Maybe I have learned critical thinking, and maybe I have studied the history of race in America, and they haven't. But does that make my racism any better than their racism? Or do I not think I am racist? Or am I less racist? Back in the days of the civil rights movement in the late 60s, a black friend told me he would much rather deal with the blatant racism of Southern rednecks than with the self-righteous white liberals whose unacknowledged racism fills the halls of power in society. That was a humbling experience for me to hear that as a white liberal, thinking that I was such a good person working for racial justice. That was my black friend's intent, to bring me down off my liberal high horse and take a look at the log in my own eye rather than the speck in the Southern redneck's eye. That's original with me. With a credit to, what's his name? Jesus. I still have a lot of work to have more humility and feel that I'm not somehow better than, smarter than, more educated than those conservatives I hear defending Donald Trump when they know he is not a true conservative. I still have a lot of work on having more humility when I try to have a conversation with rural Republicans in the Red Blue America work that I do in the national movement when they are spouting conspiracy theories. But I think we need a bit more humility. A second thing I think that we liberal UUs can learn from having more conservatives in our midst is that spending more time with conservatives can help us to better learn the practice of compassion. So humility, compassion. Compassion is perhaps the most powerful of all human emotions. To practice compassion is to try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. To literally see ourselves in the other person. That's what makes compassion so powerful. There is no deeper human connection than to see yourself in another person. Seeing ourselves in both the best in the person and in the worst of the other person. So how could our having more conservatives in our midst help us with the practice of becoming more compassionate? I think the real test of compassion for us as liberals would be to ask ourselves if we could have even an iota of compassion, not just for conservatives, not just for Trump voters, but for Donald Trump himself. To have compassion, I love this, because we're speaking truth in our voices. To have compassion for Donald Trump doesn't mean we condone his words or his actions, which have been harmful to millions of people. But to have compassion for Donald Trump would be to see ourselves in Donald Trump. For me, in Donald Trump, I see a child. We could stop right there, I know. For Donald Trump, in Donald Trump, I see a child who grew up with a demanding father and an emotionalist mother, and he was sent away to military school. So a child who grew up without much love. It's very easy for me to see myself in Donald Trump because I spent 12 years growing up in an orphanage. And I can still see the car driving away as my aunt left me there, 6 years of age, feeling alone and unloved. But what really makes me have compassion for Donald Trump is that I know that while millions of us grew up without much love as children, most of us somehow found our way and we have experienced deep love. It is clear that Donald Trump is still that unloved child who may never in his entire life experience what it means to be deeply loved. And that's tragic for any human being. Sadly, with his being born with wealth and power, millions have suffered as a result of his unresolved childhood wounds. But compassion for Donald Trump would be the advanced placement course in compassion. What if we started with just trying to better understand our conservative family members, friends, and neighbors? Most of the time, just to keep the peace, we just don't talk politics with our conservative family members and friends. But what if we took the time to actually listen to their life stories and to try to understand why they believe as they believe? Was there something significant or meaningful or painful which brought them to their conservative beliefs that are so different than ours? What if we showed them genuine respect and were open-minded when listening to their solutions to our common human problems? I'm talking about the practice of compassion because although compassion is seemingly hardwired in all of us, we tend to only show compassion to those we love or care about. So practicing compassion, trying to understand the heart and mind of that Trump voter in our family or in our neighborhood will take a lot of intention and a lot of practice. At first, it'll feel forced and unnatural, but in time, it will actually become the way we relate, not just to conservatives, but to everyone. That's what makes compassion such a deep, powerful human connection. In the Red Blue America work I do with Braver Angels and Living Room Conversations, I have personally experienced amazing connections and breakthroughs with right-wing Trump voters just by leading with respect and a genuine desire to hear their story. In these days when our nation is so so divided. Compassion for one another can be the start, a small start, but a start towards slowly coming back together. Which brings me to the third thing we can learn by welcoming more conservatives into our midst. We can learn what it means to truly be a beloved community. I sense we have a great community here at Treasure Coast already, with the various ways of getting together and the sharing of joys and concerns. And by the way, I think we should all go to Ronnie and Fred's house for a Halloween tour to see all the beautiful displays. We have I think, a very beautiful community here. In the short time I've been here, I sense the love and the care in this congregation. But if we truly want to be an open, inclusive, and diverse community, then the real challenge becomes welcoming those we find most difficult to welcome. Though I am not a Christian, I still consider myself a follower of many of the teachings of Jesus. And the teachings of Jesus call us to love not just those who love us, not just those who are like us, not just those who think like us. For Jesus, the deepest love is to love those most difficult for us to love. The poor, the leper, the beggar, the Samaritan, the one who strikes you on the cheek, the rich, the enemy. Having more diversity in our community, including more diverse viewpoints in greater numbers, is not an easy path. It's a lot simpler when we don't have so many disagreements. But a truly beloved community is one where the boundaries keep moving further and further outward, and you work through your disagreements to find common ground. Common ground among those with differences is the most beautiful, uniting community there can be. Learning to be more humble and more compassionate with our conservative brothers and sisters will actually make us a stronger, more deeply connected community than when we are held together primarily by like-minded views. I don't know how we actually go about inviting more conservative into our midst. Maybe we just want to invite them in for coffee and tell them to go back home and say we did that. Perhaps those who are conservatives that we invite into our midst to spend some time with us, even if just for a while, until either gets exasperated, would be best done by personally inviting those you know who trust you enough to know that you're inviting them and genuinely know that we would be committed to trying to talk and work and understand one another together. Otherwise, we just remain in our camp and in their camp. And we continue to have conflicts, winners, losers, election cycle after election cycle. A lot to chew on. For now, I just hope we can have more conversation about it all, because I think it could make us a stronger, a more vibrant, and even a growing community. Amen. May it maybe be so.
Our final hymn is hymn number 148, Let Freedom Span Both East and West.
I'll try to get Try to get this working again. It goes off by its own time. So, pardon me. I'll bring an amp next time. Just 3 verses, sorry.
Very good. For our closing words or benediction today, I'd like to leave you with one of my favorite all-time folk tales, which might help in our becoming more humble and compassionate as we seek to be a beloved community. The story goes like this. For thousands of years, the peoples of the world cried out to the divine spirit in the sky to send them the truth, the answer to all their questions and the pathway to true happiness in life, the truth with a capital T. And for thousands of years, the divine spirit in the sky denied their request, wanting them to discover it for themselves. Finally, having compassion for their suffering, the divine spirit in the sky relented and placed the truth in a beautiful glass sphere, and angels were summoned to bring the truth down to the earth. On the way down, the angels dropped the sphere, carrying the truth, and it fell to the earth, and it shattered into millions of little pieces all over the earth. To this day, people all over the world find a piece of the truth and say, the truth, I have the truth. And the story ends with this teaching. Only when one who has a tiny piece of the truth puts that piece of the truth together with another one's piece of the truth, and another, will the truth become known, and the world will discover the pathway to happiness and peace. Amen.
Thank you very much. That was J.S. Bach, and go and have a dynamic day. And go and